Okay, so it's saying that you would have approximately at retirement, which would be 67 for you, is what I put in, 1.6 million saved in retirement if you continue this exact trajectory. Hello, and welcome to Financials Podcast Future Rich. I'm your host, Barbara Ginty, and I'm also a CFP, which is a certified financial planner. And I am here with my guest today, Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And Sarah, so I know a little bit about you. We are now doing intake forms, so that helps me a bit by finding out a little bit in advance. So you are married, you have no children, you are 40, your husband is 38, and you reside in Connecticut. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your situation and your income and assets and all that jazz?
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband and I are both employed. I work in museums full time. I have for about 15 years at this point, and my husband works in construction management. He's currently working as a freelancer. We have, uh, let's see, we've had several kind of big financial moments in our lives. I took out a lot of student loans for undergrad. I did not pay for grad school, but I did have those undergrad student loans to pay off, which was kind of the main focus of the first few years of our marriage. We've done some atypical things. My husband is European, so we had to get a visa for him to come over, and then the paperwork and everything for green cards. Those are pretty pricey, the whole process when all is said and done. So we spent quite a bit on that. And then we spent some time living back in Europe. So we've done an international move, both directions
And
there
where
and
in
then
Europe?
coming back. Germany.
Where, oh, in Germany. Okay, very nice.
Yeah. So that's been both, I mean, the cost of moving overseas and moving back. And then also, like when we moved to Germany, we were there for him to go to grad school. I didn't have a job right away. So periods of unemployment around that transition both directions.
Yeah, that's a lot. We've had some other guests who have come on who have moved abroad, and I always think that seems like really fun.
Yeah, it was a great adventure for sure.
Okay, and so now you're back in the States.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, and we have moved out to Connecticut. Things kind of seem to have stabilized. We're both kind of settled into our careers, and just over a year ago, we purchased a condo, which is something that we had been saving for quite some time. And so that was kind of the last known step on our financial journey. And now, retirement is this thing off in the distance that I know I need to be thinking about, but don't quite have a full concept of what that looks like.
Yeah, so we'll dive into the retirement because you put that down as something you're very interested in. With the home purchase, so you have a mortgage of 254,000 at 7.125%. And then how much did you put down on that?
We put 20% down.
Great.
It was the 330 was the cost of the place. We put 20%
Perfect.
down.
I love that. That's great. So okay. So and then you still have we'll go through. So your income, you're making around 76,000 a year. Wonderful. Okay. And then your husband is a bit variable because he's freelancing in construction management.
That's right.
So we'll say he makes somewhere around 150, give or take. Depends on
Yep.
the year. Okay.
Yeah.
And so your take home between the two of you after you're both contributing to your work plans, which we'll get into, you're taking home $10,800 a month. And then you're spending 7,800 on expenses. What amount of that is the mortgage? Just curious what your mortgage is.
Yeah. So our mortgage is 2,300, and then on top of that, we pay an extra 500 towards principal each month.
Okay, great. So 20 of the 7,800, 2,800 is going towards mortgage and the rest is going towards your other expenses.
Correct.
And the mortgage is your only debt.
That's right.
Great, that's fantastic. Okay, and then you have in savings, you have 90,000 in your 403b. Your husband has 100,000 in his 401k. Now, is that a solo 401k that he set up, or is that from a former employer?
It's from a former employer.
Okay, so now that he's freelancing, he's not contributing to that anymore.
He is, well, So his with his current position, he's on a longer term contract on a W-2.
Okay.
And so even though he is freelance and he does have W-9 contracts right now, he's on a 12-month W-2.
Okay, so he's W-2, so he's eligible for benefits, so he is contributing. Okay, because I was like, that was where you caught me a little, because I was like, wait, freelance is usually 1099. Um, okay, so he has 100,000 in his 401k, and he's actively contributing, and he's putting in 8%, and he has a 4% match. You're putting in 10%, and you have a 5% match, which is you have great
Correct.
matches.
Yeah,
And then outside of that, you have $24,000 in an account that you've earmarked for freelance. Is that because of the variable income with your husband? Okay.
exactly right.
And then you have 40,000 in an emergency fund.
Yes,
Okay, perfect. I know you have that broken down a little, but 10,000 is emergency fund, and but I like it's if you there was an emergency, you have access to all 40. You just have it tagged differently. Okay, amazing. And your big question is what to do about retirement because your husband might be having more money come due at the end of the month. You're budgeting off the 6,800 net after the 401k contribution and your 403b contribution, but you end up having a little bit of extra money at the end of the year.
that's right. I have been promoted recently, and my husband is now earning more than he has in the past. And so our incomes have increased quite a bit over the last few years, and I've tried to be conservative about how much I increase our expenses in response. But now there's sort of a gap where I've been conservative enough that we have a good chunk left over, and I'm sort of wrestling with this. Should it all go to retirement because that pot needs to fill somehow, or can we have a little more fun? What's the right balance?
Yeah, no, that's great because even with the take home of 10,800 with basically 2,800 going towards the mortgage, the other 5,000 for groceries, subscriptions, gas, all that stuff. You still have 3,000 left over, which you're already using for saving short term and long term. Um, so yeah, it comes down to what do we think you need for retirement, which is a tricky question, right? So I'm going to ask you a couple things. One, the house that you're in now is a townhome or condo. You said
A condo. Yep.
a condo. Is that where you're planning on staying, or
No, probably not long term.
okay? And you would want to buy something else long term?
I think there's a good chance we would relocate. This is honestly the longest we've lived in
Okay.
any one place, living here for 5 years. So I could see us being here for another 5 or even 10 years, but I don't think this is where we're going to live forever.
Okay. So are you interested in saving more for another down payment or like
Yeah,
or
I do. I think that's has high potential.
okay. Um okay, so then let's see from there. So I do think that you could and maybe should do a little bit more towards retirement. So what you're saving of 10% of your salary is approximately 7,600, right? A year from your side is going in and then you're getting roughly 3,300 give or take from your company.
Hmm.
Does that sound the number sounds right? And so you're putting around just around 11,000 a year into your between the company match and your contribution into your workplace plan. Okay. And then your husband is doing 8% of his. So he's doing, let's see, do you want to use, is it 150? Is that an appropriate number to use? Is that the W-2 portion?
Yes, yeah, I think that works.
Does that work? Okay. So he's doing 150,000 and he's doing 8%. So he's putting 12,000 in. Um, and then the company is also matching him, which is the matches are great. They really help long term. So they're putting 6,000 in. So he's doing 18,000 a year. So let's just extrapolate out like where we think these values are going to be. And I think that will be an interesting way to see like what you're going to have. And then we can kind of back into the numbers, right? And so the hard part is with planning for retirement is you want to come up with a number you think is going to be right, but you don't want to just set it and forget it, right? So right now, if living on 7,800, approximately 8,000 covers everything, and that's a good number, that's great. But if in 5 years your number is 10,000, then you just want to tweak your retirement plan to account for the fact that you're going to want more money later. So let's just plug this in here. It's going to take me a second. Okay, so it's saying that you would have approximately at retirement, which would be 67 for you is what I put in, 1.6 million saved in retirement if you continue this exact trajectory, right? So everything would need to stay the same. So you would need to keep saving the 10%, still have the 5% match. Your husband would need to do the same. And we can run it if you know what the actual dollar amounts is going in, the software just assumes how the match is calculated, right? Because matches are tricky because it's like 4% of your salary or, 100 cents on the dollar up until a certain max. So the matches are always where you want to make sure we have the right dollar amount that's being calculated, especially when we're looking for a 27-year projection, which is what we're doing for you specifically. So that would say you would be at 1.6, your husband would be at 2.3 million, so it would say approximately 4 million. That is using, in my opinion, this calculation is using like an 8.5% return. I think that's a bit high. So I would say I would plan on lower amounts, right, than 1.6. But I think if we were going to ballpark it, you say if you were around 1.2 and he was around 2, right, then that would be a good number combined. Now, remember, this is all taxable in retirement. So you didn't pay tax going in, which is great, but you will pay tax going out for the amount that's pulled. The other thing that's really interesting that I don't think is talked enough about for retirement planning is what you would get for Social Security. And everyone says it won't be there. And I have enough podcasts saying that I think it will be there.
I love
So
that confidence.
yeah, I just think it is our largest entitlement system in our country, and I think the last I looked, it was 67 million people are reliant on it. That's a big, big, big problem if it goes away. Like, I mean, it's really even hard to visualize how many people that is if you think about it. And so I just think it has to get fixed. How they fix it, there's like a lot of different options, but I think it has to get fixed. I think the biggest thing is what we know as a retirement age might get rolled back because with life expectancy, when they first came out with Social Security, the life expectancy just wasn't as long. It wasn't meant to be collected for 30 years and you were going to contribute for 25. Like it's a seesaw. So people are just living longer and longer. So it is very possible it was meant for old age and old age when they created it was 65. That's not that old. Like if you think about like your family tree, like 65 isn't really that old, but back then it was a lot older. 65, like in terms of life expectancy because of the advancements in medicine and technology. So, anyway, to give you an estimate based on your date of birth, so we use your date of birth and just your current income, not assuming any inflation, any adjustments, just based on your current income, using the Social Security calculator, which you can go to ssa.gov and calculate a potential benefit. It's not going to be exact. You can go and create an account and get your actual benefit based on your real earning history year by year for every year you've been in the system. But this one is saying at 67 in 2053, based on your current earnings, um, with a retirement date of June 2053, your benefit would be $2,700 a month. Now, some people are like, well, that's not enough to live on. And it's like, it's not, but it's a great supplement. And Social Security was designed to be a supplement. It was never designed to be 100% of your income. It was only meant to supplement what you also had saved or what you were entitled to as an employer benefit, like a pension. Now we don't have those. We have 401ks. So if we got your retirement to, let's say, approximately 1.2 million by continuing to save and have these matches, which, as you said, if you move, all of this has to just get recalculated. So 1.2 million sounds wonderful, and it is. But if we think about what it is actually going to spit out as a, realistic distribution, I usually say starting, and people will argue with me, but 4% is the rule we've used for a very long time. I think it's conservative. Can you take 5 or 6? Sure. 4 is what we use. I think it's better. No one's ever been upset with me when they have more money in retirement than they planned for. Like, no one's ever been like, shoot, really was hoping we'd only have 1 million. Like, no one's ever been like, oh, wait, man, it worked out way better than expected. So I think it's better to be cautious with your calculations and conservative and then end up in a better position because, you can't predict what's going to happen in life. And so if we are conservative with our estimates and something takes you off track, like a health issue or stepping out of the workforce, or maybe something fun, like you decide to take a year off, like then you can get back on track way easier because we didn't have these crazy numbers that you have to like hit every year to get to where we're saying you need to go. So that's just my personal way of doing it. And for me, working with individuals that, being a practitioner in this business, not an influencer, big difference. That's worked out really well in real life because there's a very big difference between talking about it and researching it and then actually sitting down with somebody and being responsible for where do they get to that end goal. And so I always like to be conservative as a practitioner in this industry. So if you end up with $1.2 million saved for retirement, that would generate around $48,000 in taxable income, right? So it doesn't completely replace what you're used to, which is 76,000. The difference is the 76,000 you are also contributing to your 401k or 403b. So it's not a apples to apples, but the rest of it's pretty similar. You are still going to have to pay for health insurance. You are still going to be paying taxes. The one tax you will not be paying is you will not be paying FICA. So you will not be paying your Social Security and your Medicare because then you would be receiving Social Security and Medicare, so you're not paying that. But that's the only difference. You're not saving for a retirement plan and then you're not paying FICA. But so the 48,000 would break down to a monthly amount of 4,000 a month gross, right? Not net. And then you would have the 2,700 in Social Security, right? So then that would be 6,700 gross. So we might be pretty, so then let's just say you're going to pay like 20% Fed, give or take. That's a like ballpark. And then you, depending on state tax, some states give you a break on Social Security and on IRA distribution. So you just have to know your state. So depends what state you're in. So for instance, in New York State, the first $20,000 retirement income you don't pay on. So we'll just say that you're not going to pay a lot in state. Who knows? Maybe you'll live in Florida. So then of that money that you're getting, you would be netting around 5,300 using just a 20% federal and not including state. Now, if you had state, maybe it's 48. So then that comes with Social Security combined with the IRA distribution, that comes pretty close to what your take home, a bit over what your take home is now, right?
Yep.
Does that make sense on like how to give yourself a ballpark or does that seem overwhelming?
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
That's yeah, it feels really good to be able to come to some sort of number to feel like, okay, that's, everything kind of smoothed out. That's about an average. And if I want to be more conservative and kind of make sure that all of those round up and feel a little bit more comfortable, I kind of know where to start.
And then your husband being at around 2,000,000 is a good number for him because then 4% of 2,000,000 is 80,000. So once again, not back to where he is, but with his higher income, his Social Security benefit should be higher. So if his Social Security benefit is closer to 3,500, right? And you can go on and just with 150 and his date of birth, see what his number is going to be. And then that way you can say, okay, with these two combined, then we're back to what we're currently making. Now, as you make more and you want to spend more, then you need to increase the retirement to supplement that. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yep.
So I think with your current savings and what the matches are, you're in a good spot. Now, as I said, no one's ever been upset with having more or hitting the numbers earlier, right? Like I'm using 67, like maybe 57 is a better number. And then that means you have to save more to do it earlier because you're missing 10 years of compounding interest. That's using 67. And because you won't get Social Security, the earliest you can get Social Security is 62, but you take a huge hit to do that. So your best bet usually is to wait till at least full retirement or somewhere near there. I also encourage even delaying it to 70, depending on the situation. So if you want to do retirement early and you're going to miss those 10 years of compounding and not have that supplement with Social Security, then you do need to save more. So here's what I would say. I would say with your extra income that you have at the end of the year, I think it's worth looking at the Roth to see if you will be below the threshold. So for 2026, um, married filing jointly, the phase out begins at 242,000 and after 252,000 you're not eligible. So to do the Roth in its entirety, to do the 7,500, you need to be below 242,000. I think that would be worth looking at it. As you said, you have extra money right now. That might not always be the case. So what I would do if I were in your shoes, because life is funny. I would say since you have the extra money and you're like, there's not, we might buy another house, but we've been here for 5 years. We're not sure. I would say I would just do the Ross.
Okay.
And then what
Mhm.
you have left over, you could do an investment account with that, just like a regular old investment account. Because I think you have enough in the emergency fund. Like you have bandwidth in your actual budget of 3,000 a month extra, and you have 40,000 in emergency fund. So I would say I would do the Ross now because you might not always, you might move to a more expensive area where you might need to spend more than 330 to get what you want, and your housing costs might go up, right? And then, so I would give yourself the wiggle room, and I would say if you're gonna doing extra retirement now will make a bigger difference than doing extra retirement at 50. Like this is
Mhm.
the time to do extra retirement at 40 and 38 because you get all that additional compounding. So if I were in your shoes without any other additional goals that are like wait, over your head at the moment, like and you're happy and you're able to do everything you want to do. If I were in your shoes, I would put more in the Ross and then do an investment account. So you have a non-retirement account because then you're getting all three buckets. Because if you listen to the podcast, I like all buckets. Gives you optionality, so I would do the Roth, and then you can start the investment account with the extra money from your husband, and then with your regular monthly budget that you plan on, you're doing that now, but you're doing the IRAs, which 401k, 403s, or IRAs, meaning it's going to be taxed at retirement. And then you're getting all three, and you have a fully funded emergency fund. So I would just tack on the Roth and then an investment account, and then see how life plays out because you can always taper down the retirement in 5 years or 6 years, depending on what your situation is. You say, okay, we did the Roth for 5 years or 10 years, and now we want to focus more on traveling or whatever it is.
Yeah. And if we were to do the Roths and then, discover that unfortunately my husband is really good at freelance and we're never gonna be under that and we're not finding ourselves under
Right.
that threshold, what is that,
Now,
everything into that investment account
well,
or
you know what you could do? You can check to see if your workplace offers Roth inside of your plans. Because if there's a Roth 403b or there's a Roth 401k inside of your work plans, you can just add that. And the tricky part is, you just need to know you're gonna be oh, you know what? That there's no income threshold. Sorry, fra
great?
baby brain. There's no threshold for the work plans. So that's what I would do. If he starts making more money, I would do the roster the workplace plan because you're not maxing them out with your contributions right now. Yeah. You can't go in the front door, you go in the back door. But then that way you can still do it.
Yeah, that's great.
But I think that would be nice. I think that'll give you a lot of options in retirement if you can have all three buckets: non-retirement, which is private money invested, Roth, and then IRA monies. Now they can, like as I said, they can all be in the workplace plan. It can be a Roth 401k, Roth doesn't matter. It just means it's after tax.
Okay. Yep.
So that's what I would do. So any other questions?
Um, this has been the bulk of it. This is super helpful, just trying to figure out what that next step is. I do think I sometimes wonder. We have some home improvements that are on the sort of fun to do, not totally essential. And so I do kind of wonder, do we put a chunk of money into the condo and then, maybe you get that out on the other end, but maybe you don't versus prioritizing those investment accounts.
So what I would say is, yeah, you don't always get it out. You'd have to really talk to like a real estate agent to say, if we did XYZ, like what do you think we list the property for? Even there, it's still a best guess. It depends on the market. Like, is the market going to be a good market or is it going to be soft? Like, some people aren't able to sell right for the prices they thought they could sell. We've talked a lot about that on the podcast that real estate can go great, but it also doesn't always. So I would err on the side of, I think, given your ages, I would do more into retirement now, and as you pointed out, you've kept your lifestyle pretty consistent. So as you get more bandwidth, like maybe next year or the year after, if the freelancing is going really well and you're saving more than 3,000 a month, then I would consider it. But I would do a year or two of putting a bit more towards the retirement since there's nothing like it doesn't sound like there's anything dire that you want to renovate and it's not your forever home. So that's like if you're like, "Oh, we love it here. We're going to be here. We're definitely not moving and we really need like we really think we would enjoy the property if we had like a back deck because we don't plan on moving." It's like, "Okay, well you're probably maybe not going to get out of the property, but you're going to get your use out of it," is what I would say.
Mhm.
So that's where I would say since you're not sure you're gonna be there that long, because then you're just beholden to the market. When you decide you wanna go, it's like, you might get it back, you might not, but if you're definitely leaving, then you have to sell.
Yep.
Or you don't
Yeah.
have you could rent it, but so I would lean maybe do 1 year on retirement, 2 years on retirement, and then reevaluate.
Yep. That makes sense. That sounds
You're
good.
definitely gonna retire.
Yes.
Right.
That's the biggest priority.
That's the big priority. And I guess the only other thing you didn't bring this up, so this would be one question for you. Do you each have life insurance on each other?
Um, Probably whatever standard work, um, yeah, work
I
thing,
think
but
I think that would be worth looking at because his income is almost double your income. And so if anything happened to your husband, everything would be a bit tighter for you in terms of carrying. I mean, you could still swing it with 4,000 take home, but the mortgage is you'd have to go down to 2,300 and then it would be a lot tighter. So I think you should both look at insurance for each other. Maybe his would be a higher policy in my opinion because of based on his income, and yours would be a lower policy. But still, if anything happened to you, he would lose 4,000 a month in income, and as you said, his income is more variable. So I do think it'd be worth looking at insurance on each other. You would just do. I'm a big believer in term, which is temporary insurance. It's the cheapest kind you can get. It's basically renting insurance. So you rent it for a period of 15, 20, 30 years. The way I've always done it is if you do 30 and you're 70, you can always get rid of it at 60, you know. So you could choose the length of time you're comfortable with, but I would definitely at least cover the mortgage amount so that if anything happened to one of you, you could still stay in the home and it wouldn't be stretched.
yeah, that makes
It's pretty cheap though when you look at it'll be cheaper for you because you're a female. It's pretty cheap. So you can just go online and look for it, but you don't need, in my opinion, I'm not a believer in permanent insurance in
Mhm.
this sort of scenario. I would only do temporary, which is term and for
Okay.
a set period of years.
Yeah, that's great to know about. I didn't even know that that was a thing.
Yeah, it's really cheap. I think I got mine at 29 and I got $1 million and I think it's $100 a month or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like renter's insurance.
Yep.
It's worth every penny if God forbid you need it. You hope to never use it, but it's affordable and then would prevent a future problem. So yeah, I would do that. I just think it would be peace of mind for me. God forbid anything happened,
Yep.
and statistically shouldn't, but
Yeah.
you still get renter's insurance and homeowners insurance and all the insurances. So I think term insurance would be you could afford it, probably be a couple $100 a month for both
Mhm.
of you.
Mhm.
And then that way when you're switching jobs doesn't go with you. And then if you're both healthy now, it's better to get it before there's any medical problems because then it's much more difficult to get it and much more
Mm.
expensive
Yep.
if there should be a medical problem. And if you were to get a bigger house in the future, right? And then he's freelance is doing really well, and his income is more than double than yours. If anything happens and you're kind of in trouble financially.
Yeah, that as someone who likes to worry about everything, that sounds like a great peace of mind.
Yeah, it's good peace of mind. Yep, exactly. Um, and then you should also just make sure you have your other important documents like power of attorney, healthcare proxies, will, and that you have the right beneficiaries on everything.
That is a good 40th birthday
I know.
objective.
40th birthday. Actually, I think, yeah, well, how old am I? I'm 41. Yeah, so we did all of our estate planning at 40, like serious, like trust, like serious stuff
Mhm.
at 41. But I got life insurance at 29. Yeah, so I do that. But no, I think you guys are in a good pace for retirement. I think, as I said, while you don't have anything like earmarked or anything specific, I mean, you could always do a renovation, right? I mean, I feel like anybody who owns a home, you're always like, oh, I could do that, or I could, right? Like you walk around the house and you're just like, after being there 5 years or 6 years or whatever, you're like, well, I could probably do new countertops, right? You'd always do something fun inside of a
Absolutely.
property.
Yep.
But I would say, like right now, since there's nothing like really like on the docket, I would say do the retirement and then keep reevaluating if that still feels right for you guys.
Yeah, that makes sense. With thinking about the home piece, and let's say we were to move in 5 or 10 years and move to a more expensive place, and then we will need some liquid assets at that point. So kind of as we're thinking about what goes into these investment accounts, also keeping kind of continuing to add to that, just like high yield savings account fund, so that that money would be there in 5 years if we wanted it.
Yeah, exactly, and you would also have the investment account. We
Okay.
talked about
Yep.
the difference between the Roth and the like, so if he gets an extra 25,000 this year and 15 or 12 goes towards Roth, and the rest would go toward an investment account. So that could be used for a down payment, right? There's a few ways you could do it. That could be you could use some of the emergency fund because as you said, that's growing and you won't need all of that for an emergency fund. The other thing you could do is you could say, we want to keep the property in Connecticut. We're going to rent it. You always take a home equity line of credit against the one property to get the next property. I mean, there's a lot, you'll have a lot of options, but I do think the investment account is an important piece of that because that would supplement what you have in an emergency fund. So that could always be used for a down payment. And people don't realize this depends where your investment account is. It depends what the value is. So let's just say this is in 10 years or 7 years, and that investment account now is $100,000. You've been doing 10,000 a year for the last 7 years and it's grown. Depending on where that investment account is, you can always borrow against it too.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then what some people do, which is simple, is they just sell the one property and buy the next property. Some people like to keep it as a rental. Depends where you're moving and what you want your lifestyle to be, because an out of town rental, according to people on Instagram, is super easy. I have not found it. I've talked to other people who've owned out of town rentals, and if you own one and you're not in the business of real estate and you have a day job and a life, it's sometimes not so fun. I mean, maybe it's been great for other people. Just depends who you are. It depends what your luck is, I think. Like you could have a great property manager, you could have a terrible property manager.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, we're in a condo because we wanna minimize that for our own
yeah.
selves, let alone
Okay,
doing
so then
that.
maybe you would just sell this property
Yeah.
and then, yeah, buy the next one. But yeah, you have a lot of the more like pieces you get, I guess, is like from a financial structure. Like you have the Roth, the investment account, the regular retirement accounts. Because Roth, you could always pull back what you had originally contributed to if you wanted to. I wouldn't
Mhm.
advise that, but the more pieces you have, the more options you have. Does that make sense?
It does,
So
that's actually a really good way of thinking of it. I'm somebody who likes to, because finance is so big and intimidating, it's easier if it's sort of in these neat little rows, and I so the simpler it is, the easier it is for me, but understanding that actually, that diversification is going to be what's more helpful in the long run, is
the
good
way you
insight.
think about it, it's like the more tools in your toolkit, like you could say, okay, so this is what we want to do. Okay, so we have the Roth, and this is what the Roth can do, and this is what we're allowed to take from the Roth. And then we have a 401k. And technically, if he's actively employed in the 401k, you can borrow against the 401k. I don't love these ideas, but they're there.
Mhm.
And then we have this investment account that we started 5 years ago that now has 60,000. Well, that's available. And depending on where it is and their thresholds, it probably needs to be a little bit bigger than that, but you can borrow from that. We also own this other property, which is a tangible asset. We can borrow against that. So once you have all these pieces, you have different, and it can be overwhelming, right? Because they all have different rules, but they have different rules. So therefore, they have different opportunities, how they can be leveraged. And so I like to see people who are being you have the opportunity to be strategic because you've kept your housing costs low, which is key. Because often when you listen to the podcast, people's housing costs sometimes eat up the rest of the budget. And so we
Mhm.
don't have a lot of optionality for saving different vehicles because we're spending so much on housing and life, or daycare. Daycare is like another huge expense that you hear on the podcast, which is crazy. And so the more tools you can get, like the more vehicles you can get, the more options you have. And so then you can be more strategic in levering what each account offers you.
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it.
So that's why I want you to do both the Roth and the investment account, because
Yeah.
then we're doing both, and then that starts to put you in a very good position. Because then when we're looking at making other decisions later, like buying another house, you can say, okay, like here are the three vehicles we have. We have three different sets of tools. Which one are we going to use for this scenario?
Yep.
And so that's when you get the term insurance, don't just buy it for the mortgage amount of 250 because you might buy another property.
Mhm.
So I would say probably at a minimum for you would be like 500,000 and 1,000,000 for him, give it ballpark. If you think about trying to replace future income and you say he makes 150 and we're going to cover 30 years, it would be a lot more than that. But if you say what would be a dollar amount where we could either one of us could take care of the mortgage, pay that off so we don't have housing costs, and make sure we're both okay for retirement. I like to do it based on not replacing income, but replacing more of a needs, right? Like, so you would need to retire, he would need to retire. You both would want to live comfortably. So then figuring out what that dollar amount is and then ballpark. I wouldn't do just the mortgage amount, given that you have never lived somewhere so long and you might want to live somewhere else. And then it could be a more expensive mortgage, could be a 350 or $400,000 mortgage, you know?
Yep.
And then once you have it, you're done, right? You have it for 30 years. You don't want to have to go back and get another one. So
Right.
I will tell you, I didn't do enough. I did 1,000,000 at 29 and I was like, that's plenty. Was not plenty. So I had to go get another one. And then I was nervous because at that point I had to have a bunch of breast biopsies. And I was like, oh my gosh, if these come back, then
Yeah.
it's gonna be much harder to get or much more expensive to get life insurance. And so the biopsies came back benign, which was great. And I was like,
Yeah.
getting more life insurance.
Doing it
It was
now.
yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna get another 2,000,000 because I don't want to have to worry about it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what I always say to clients is like, if you're on the fence, you're like, I don't know if I should do 500 or 750, just do the 750 because then you have it.
Yep. Yeah. And incrementally in what you're paying per month. I
It's
mean,
like nothing.
yeah.
Yeah. It's really, especially with term when you're young and healthy, it's really not that much. So I learned from my mistake. At 29, I was like, $1,000,000 is so much. And
Uh-huh.
that, and it is. But, you know, as the business grew and I had more obligations, I have two mortgages now, I have a husband and a child and all the things. It's like,
Yep.
no, $1,000,000 isn't going to cut it.
Yep. Yeah.
Isn't going to cut it. So, hopefully I don't end up on Dateline because I have $3,000,000 in insurance now. You watch Dateline and they're like, they killed him for like 500,000. I'm like, why did you only have $500,000 in insurance? That's not
Right?
enough insurance. So,
Got some
um,
standards here.
yeah, I know. Geez, that wasn't enough. I was like, they showed the clip of the house, and they're like, and he killed her for $500,000. You're
Right?
like, there's no way. There's no way that was enough money. She was underinsured.
Oh.
Um, so yeah, you want to make sure you err on the side of caution. You want to do it once, not have to do it again. Lock in the price
Yep.
now because it never changes.
Mhm.
So that would be the only other thing I would add to that you didn't ask about that I would add.
Yeah, great.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was a good retirement lesson.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is really helpful. It's that sort of starting with that end number and working backwards is a really I'm so much doing so much budgeting like in the moment and looking month to month that even though I've heard you say this a gazillion times on the other episodes, like really thinking about what that means for me has been a really great shift in the way I'm viewing how we think about retirement and plan for it.
Amazing. Well, for all of our lovely listeners, you can follow along on Instagram at Future Age Podcast. And if you like the show, the biggest thing you can do to help us is share with a friend and rate and review us. Time for our disclaimer. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance references are historical and do not guarantee future results. Make sure that you consult with your own legal, tax, and/or financial advisor before making any decisions.